We'll be here this evening talking about the flexible tuition process here at the Bay School of San Francisco. We'll go ahead and we'll wait a few moments and give everyone a little bit more time to log in and settle in because there's Alyssa, yay! Oh, we are in for a treat. We've got the best with us. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to learn lots and lots of things, my friends. Now, before we start, everyone, make sure you grab something to drink, some water, coffee, tea, something, pen. There will be lots of note taking, lots of note taking. Alyssa's got her Starbucks. We're ready to go. And then, paper for that pen. We're going to learn a lot of different things today. And I'm just really thankful that Alyssa could be with us. Mission Enrollment is a wonderful company that has been of great support, not just for Bay, but for all of the families that we have been able to work with the last several years. So really feeling thankful and grateful and just so happy that all of you are here tonight to learn from one of the best. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my friend who is going to go ahead and start our program. If any of you need translation, Spanish translation, there's Spanish translation available this evening, and we'll go ahead and put that information up in just a few moments on the screen. All right, Alyssa, you're on.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody, from joining. Give me 1 second so
Hola, muchas gracias por venir.
you have to give me the ability to share my screen. That's going to be critically important. I can remember a lot, but I can't remember all the slides.
All right, we're going to get our tech guru on that. She'll give you the access so you can share that screen. All
All
right.
right. While she's getting that ready, thank you guys so much for joining tonight. Just to give you a quick about me, I do live in Southern California, so I'm probably why I'm still in short sleeves as opposed to fully in sweaters up in the Northern California. Um, I am a mom of two independent school kids. So much like you all, this is in between like coming home from school, homework, lots of yelling about homework, back to homework, dinner time, and then I have one that I have to take, tubbies and showers and all the things. So I so appreciate you taking the time right now because I know this is a really busy time of night. So it's so appreciated. Let's see if we can share our screen. Awesome, I got it. So give me 1 quick second. Let's get the PowerPoint up and running here. All right, let me switcheroo. Okay, so I'm going to leave this slide up on the screen just for a minute. So folks, if you prefer to listen in Spanish, we want to make sure you know exactly where to go to do that. But tonight is going to be a night that I really want everybody, despite all the chaos going on in everybody's lives right now, I really want you all to walk away from this night with really three things. This is always my goal for parents. I want you to walk away with a sense of calmness. There is nothing more stressful than talking about our children and our finances. And you get the pleasure of doing both of those in this application. And so that can be very stressful for parents. Making sure you have all your documents. I don't want you running around the house and looking for things. I want you to have everything ready, calm, ready to roll so that when you go and fill out this form, you're not worried that you don't have something that you need and you're prepared to do the work. My second C is clearness. I want to give you a clear sense about what's the timeline, where do I need to go to get the information about how do I complete the flexible tuition form? What is flexible tuition? How is that different than the FAFSA for college? What is the difference in the application? And then what are the important things I need to tell you as a family? If I've lost my job, if I'm changing income, what are the important things that the school's going to need to know to make a good decision about your flexible tuition award? So this is a partnership between the school and the parents. So the more information you share, the better job we can do of awarding you for your flexible tuition award. And then the last C that I want everybody to be thinking about is about confidence. I want you to have confidence that what you're doing, this investment that you're making, I don't care if you make $50,000 or $500,000. This is a sacrifice at every level for every family. You are making a choice to spend your money on this. And so I want you to know that at first, as a parent of two independent school kids, my kids have been in independent school since they were 18 months old. I have a fifth grader and a seventh grader now. And it has been a incredible experience. Our children are global citizens. They're doing good work. I know that when they go out into the world and become good humans and they either go off to college or they go off to be entrepreneurs or they go off to the Peace Corps, they are prepared for the future that lies ahead of them. And they eventually will realize the sacrifice that parents have made. And it won't be today. It certainly hasn't come yet, but I do know that the sacrifice that you're making, this investment in your child's education, should give you a sense of confidence that this will be worth it. I promise you. I worked for 10 years at the National Association of Independent Schools, and there is oodles of research that shows that children that go to independent schools come out better prepared for what's ahead, for college, for whatever comes ahead for them. So those are my 3 C's. I want you to come with calmness. I want to give you some clearness about the process, and I want you to be confident about where you go from here, and you'll be ready to rock and roll for the next couple of months as we go through this process together. Okay, let's dive in. So what is flexible tuition for the grade 9 through 12 versus the college financial aid? You all might have kids heading off to college. You might already have kids in college. And so you might be familiar filling out the FAFSA and the profile. In college, we're going to talk about kind of the differences. The main thing you're going to notice is that we ask a lot more questions than the FAFSA does. And that's actually for good reason. So we're going to talk a little bit about the similarities and the differences between the federal form for higher ed and the independent school world flexible tuition application. Where can I go to learn more about the program? Where do I need to go to get, where are the details? Where is the place on the website? What's the link to the application? I'm going to give you all of that flow so you have all the breadcrumbs to go right to where you need to be. And then when does it all need to happen? We want to give you a nice timeline for success so that you can get in and get out and then move on with all the other pieces of the puzzle that you need to do, including all the things that are part of your life in, it was August and now it's November somehow magically. So our lives are going so fast right now. We want to make sure you get this thing done quickly so that you can focus on other pieces of the puzzle that you're going to need to do, especially in admissions. So let's talk about flexible tuition 101. In the K-12 world, but specifically in the grades 9 through 12 with the base school, a grant is the difference between what the tuition is at the school minus what the family can afford to pay. There is this gap between those two. The tuition is this, I can afford to pay that. The gap is filled with a flexible tuition grant from the school. It is based on the family's financial need. We don't care what your credit score is. We're not looking at the fact that you have the best soccer player in the world. That would be a merit-based award. This is simply based on the family's mathematical financial need. It is something that is based from the school. It's a school-specific program. It is not run by the federal government. And it is what makes independent schools so magical is that we can kind of do our own programming. We can have our own pedagogy. We can do all of our own things because we are independent from the federal government. However, we don't get any funding. And so all of the monies that are raised to fund the flexible tuition money actually come mostly from families and from donors. And if some schools are lucky enough to have an endowment, and most schools are running it out of their operating budget. And so the monies that are raised for this are based on the school's budget and what they can give out. So it's a limited program. It's not an unlimited amount of money. When your kids go off into the world and they become these great humans and they're ready to be philanthropic, we would love it if they thought back and said, I would like to give back to the community that I supported, that supported me when I went to high school. And you can give to these programs, to the flexible tuition program through annual giving. And that's what perpetuates these programs. So it's kind of an all for one and one for all. And these programs will continue on only with the help and the support of families and those that keep funding the program. It is not something you need to pay back. It is not a loan. And so because it is funded through annual giving, it's not something you have to pay back. But if you have the opportunity in the years ahead, or your kids have the opportunity to give back to the school to keep filling up that ability to give out grants in the future, that would be a wonderful thing. That's different than in higher ed, where oftentimes families have loans, they have work study programs and things like that. So it's quite a bit different, and it's not federally funded, so it's not as unlimited resources. Okay, so where do we need to go to fill out these forms? Your first stop is going to be on the Bay's website. So you want to go to the school's website and you want to click on the link that says Affording a Bay Education. If you are a returning family and you've done this previously, and this is kind of your refresher course, everybody kind of has amnesia about the process after the season is done, so it's a good refresher. Even if you don't remember the website for the FACS application, that's okay, because you don't really need to go to the admissions site if you're already an existing family, but it's here for you. If you go to the admissions page, when you click on the Affording a Bay Education, it's going to give you all of the details you need to know. There's going to be a link to the FACS Grant and Aid Assessment Tool. So the application that you're going to complete is called FACS, F-A-C-T-S. When you click on that, it's going to take you to a website, and you're going to set up an account, and you're going to complete the application. One of the things I want you to be aware of that's sort of uniquely different about Bay is that I often tell families, you want to make sure you look, because many schools, they have the tuition and then they have like 18,000 other fees you have to be paying attention to, and trips and all this other stuff. The way that they've set this up is really to help keep things simple and clean for families. And so when you look at the tuition and inclusive fee, it's going to include all those other pieces of the puzzle: laptops and software, lunch, books, supplies, field trips. All of that is going to be part of that inclusive fee, so that you know exactly what you kind of have coming up as far as these additional costs associated with independent school. When you go to the FACS Grant and Aid Assessment Tool link, if you have completed this form previously, it's so important for you to log in with the same email address you used when you did it last year if you're a returning family, because it automatically pulls data over, so you don't have to fill out those first 5 or 6 questions. It's going to save you time. If you no longer have access to the email address you used last year, that's okay. Reach out to FACS at the end of the presentation. I've got a phone number for you all. You can give them a call. They're going to ask you some security questions, and they can change your user ID. They can change your email address for you if you no longer have access to that email address. If you are a new family, when you're setting up your account, I always call it the 20% off coupon email address. Whenever I want a 20% off coupon, I have this email address that I quite literally only check to retrieve the code, and then I never go back to that email address. Some people would call it their junk email. I call it my 20% off coupon email. But don't use that to set up your FACS account, because there is going to be information that is going to be coming to you that you need to be proactively aware. This is where the partnership begins. When you set up this account, if something's missing on your application, or we need something when we're reviewing your file, you're going to get an email notification to whatever email address you use to set up the account. So make sure you use an email address that you have pretty regular access to. That's going to be really important for you, because you're going to want to be checking that, because there might be a question that might come through. Hey, it looks like you didn't answer this question in a way that made much sense. Can you give us some more information? So you might want to make sure it's something that you have pretty decent access to, a daily, every other day, that kind of thing. You want to pay attention to the documents that are going to be required and the deadline dates. We're going to talk about that next, the timeline. If you have kiddos that go to other schools for lower school, it's really important to know the big difference. One of the big differences between our program and higher ed is everybody fills out the FAFSA, everybody fills out the profile, and the deadlines are mostly the same for all colleges and universities. In our world, and in San Francisco specifically, there are other schools using different financial aid platforms. There's about 5 or 6 of them out there. And the deadline dates are not universal. They are set by the school. Remember I said it's by school. The programs are school specific. So if you've got other kiddos, grab a piece of paper, kids' names on the left-hand side, and then go to the websites of the schools. You have lower school kiddos that are going to a different school. Find out what the deadline dates are and what financial aid platform that school is using, because it might not be FACS. It could be a different system. Any school that's using FACS, you're fine. You're filling out one FACS form, and you're going to send it for all of your kids depending on where they're going. If you have a child that's going to a lower school that uses Clarity, for example, you're going to fill out the FACS application for your upper school kid, and then you're going to fill out the Clarity school for the child going to lower school. But pay attention to the deadline dates and the documents that will be required. They are not universal. Very important. I don't want you to miss a deadline because you think everybody's kind of using the same system. So here's the timeline. We are in it. It is no longer early fall. It is full on pumpkin spice season, right? So the fall leaves have dropped and we are in it. Now is the time to set up your account. The application is open. Once you set up your FACS account, if you're a returning family, like I said, go in the way you came last year, and then you want to click on the 25-26 application and start completing your form. The deadline for returning families is December 1st. So that's coming up. It's right around the corner. If you have time during the holiday break, I don't know how many days you all are getting off, but my kids are going to be home for the entire week of Thanksgiving. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but they're going to be home. If you've got time, sit down that holiday break, gather all your documents, get everything ready, and just get it off the to-do list. If you're a new family, your deadline is January 9th. Now, admissions and financial aid are a simultaneous process, meaning you are filling out all the work, you're doing your interviews, you're getting your transcripts, you're doing your tests, all the things you need to do for admissions at the same time as you're doing your flexible tuition application. That application is not going to be something you do after your child gets admitted. Don't wait and say, oh, well, just kidding. Now I need financial aid. My kid got into Bay, yay. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, just kidding. I need some assistance. You need to fill the flexible tuition application out by the deadline to be eligible. So January 9th is the deadline. There is no gold star for getting it done early, but it's just one thing. I think you should just get it done and get it off your plate. You're going to be busy doing all of the admissions pieces that you want to be really focused on. This should take you no more than 45 minutes to get off your plate and then kind of be done with it. By late winter, just to give you the timeline for enrollment pieces of the puzzle, in late winter, the schools will be doing the returning families. They'll get those awards finalized and they'll get the re-enrollment contracts out. So next year, if you're a new family, next year, you'll get your re-enrollment contracts and you'll get your new award for the next season and you'll complete your re-enrollment contract. Then they focus their attention, the schools turn focus to the new families and admissions decisions are made. And there's a common deadline date, which I didn't check the deadline date for San Francisco. Do you guys, what's the common deadline date for admissions for San Francisco? Is it like March 14th?
January 9th is
I know the one for the admissions notifications.
Oh, it'll be in March. It's towards the end of March. Let me confirm that date before I get the wrong one.
Okay. All right.
One moment.
We'll let you know what the date is, but when you get your admissions notification, and San Francisco does sort of like everybody does it on the same day, you will get your admissions notification and you will get your flexible tuition award notification on when that same timeline goes out.
21st.
Okay, so March 21st that's when you'll know where your child got in. And then it's a pretty short timeline. You have, I think it's about 2 weeks, right, to make your decision on admissions.
They have if they receive flexible tuition from the independent schools in San Francisco, you will have until Thursday, March 27th to respond to all of the schools.
Perfect. Okay, so everybody's got their timelines now, right? So January 9th, applications due and all the documents need to be in. Then you've got your March deadline coming up. So there is not a lot of time, right? We're coming, it's already November. So take that time, get it done. And then once you've gotten your award, you've made your decision, you're coming to the Bay School, great. Now you're going to be starting to make sure that everything is finalized in your application, meaning is there any other outstanding documents the school needed to close out your file so it's complete? And then by late spring, usually schools will set up their tuition payment plans to start usually like in May or June, depending on do you know when you guys do your like around May or June time frame? Is it for the tuition payment plans? It's usually in the late spring.
Yes, I'll confirm the date before we send it out.
So In the late spring, then you're going to set up your tuition payment plan. As a person, I own a business. And so for my husband and I, the way we make this work, tuition payment plans really save us because cash flow can be something we struggle. Any business owner knows this. Cash flow is always a struggle. And so having a tuition payment plan helps me to plot out our tuition payments for the kids. So making sure you give yourself kind of that nice timeline of starting to make your tuition payments. So that will start up pretty early, and then you'll start making your payments on a monthly basis. Or you can do usually it's a 1 payment, a 2 payment, or a 10-month plan is the more typical way. Early fall, rinse and repeat. So you're going to be doing this process for the next, well, minimally for the next 4 years, but then once the kids, if they go off to college, you'll be doing this for another 4 years. But you'll be a seasoned professional, and you'll be very comfortable filling out these forms once you get there. So that's our time, right? So calmness comes with, first and foremost, do a quick budget. I'm not talking about going crazy and doing some complex budget. It's really important to do a budget for 2 reasons. One, if you've never paid for independent school, getting your head wrapped around making a tuition payment every month just takes some planning. It's nice to do a budget. My husband and I do this kind of every year as an exercise. I take 2 months of bank statement, like July and August, kind of mundane months for us. There's no holidays in there, no birthdays. I take 2 months of bank statements and then I tag them. Housing, clothing, food, insurance, kids' needs, could be anything, uniforms, clothing, all those things. Categorize your items. And then once you got those categorized, put in the averages, the monthly averages, and then what does that equal for the annual? In fact, the application is going to ask you these questions anyway. The numbers matter. So if you are way underestimating something, that number is part of a calculation. So if I were to ask you how much you're spending on groceries, how much you're spending on utilities, things like that, you want to make sure you're getting good estimates. And the best way to do that in this crazy world of inflation and everything is costing a lot more, making sure you're doing a more updated budget. So even before you fill out the form, just do a quick budget for yourself. I put a link to NerdWallet, has some they have some you can download a little tool. There's another company called YNAB. You Need a Budget. And it's a more fancy one. Rocket Money is another one people use. Those are all far more complex and fancy if you want to get frisky and do all sorts of deep dives into budgeting. But minimally, you're going to be answering questions about your monthly expenses, and you're going to be answering questions about your annual expenses. So doing the budget first, you can then just quickly tick off. I've already done my research. This is what I'm spending. Here are my expenses. Where this also is important is if you are caring for elderly parents, inevitably, one of the questions is going to say, well, how much is that annually? And if you haven't kind of done an assessment, you might not know how much you're spending for grandma and grandpa. Many of us are part of what we call the sandwich generation, right? We're caring for elderly parents, and we're also trying to raise our children. And so those expenses can be pretty sizable for families. If you are caring for elderly parents that are either living with you or are living independently, doing that budget will help you to get a good sense of what is that costing you monthly. So do the budget piece first. It's going to give you about 20% or 30% of the answers to the questions on the application. The remaining questions are pretty static tax questions. What is your federal taxes paid? What was your adjusted gross income? All of those numbers live on your federal tax return. If I were to ask you, what do you make? What do you make? Oh, I make 60 grand. Okay. People know that number. What you likely don't know off the top of your head is, what was your adjusted gross income? What did you pay in federal taxes last year? I look at taxes every day and I can't tell you what my numbers are. So having copies of your tax return in front of you while you're completing the form is going to make it easier to answer the questions. All you have to use is the last year's taxes. So 2023 is last year's taxes. That's the first tax year we're looking at. Look at those numbers and use those numbers as your estimates. The only thing I want you to be aware of is that if you've had a major change in earnings from 2023 to 2024, I want you to print off a copy of your paycheck stub if you're a W-2 employee for your most recent paycheck stub if you have a major change in earnings, and then use your paycheck stub for the W-2 information as opposed to using your last year's W-2. At this point, it's almost your W-2, right? Because we're already in November. So everything you've earned up until now is almost a full year's worth of earnings. So gather your tax documents, gather your W-2s for all of the jobs if you have more than one job. And then if you've changed earnings, get copies of your paycheck, have a copy of your most recent paycheck stub. If you own a business, having a copy of your most recent profit and loss statement and balance sheet, and then having last year's profit and loss statement and balance sheet. Again, if things have massively changed. I know that there are some industries that have experienced big, big hits, real estate, those in certain tech positions. So just if there has been a big change, use those as your guide. If you have to complete more than one form, like we talked about, if you have a kid that goes to a lower school and a kid in the upper school, make sure you plan accordingly because you might have to fill out more than one financial aid application online. So find out when the deadlines are going to be. And again, I would just pick a Saturday or a day that you're home and just get them done. Just get all of them done. The questions that are going to be asked on Facts or Clarity or SSS, whatever system that you're logging into, the questions are all about the same. They're very similar. So you're going to know the answers to these. Everything you're doing here is going to help you complete any of the systems. So there's nothing sort of uniquely different about the Facts application that the other systems don't have. You're going to need to have all the tax documents. All of that stuff is going to be universal. It's just the different form that you might have to complete. It's really important. You will need to upload your 2023 tax return. It's really important that it not be password protected. So typically, if you use an accountant to do your taxes, they will send you an email that says, hey, Alyssa, your taxes are ready. Here's a copy. I'm going to send you an email with your password, and they'll send you in a separate email. So then you put the email, you put the code in, and then you can open your tax return, which is usually a PDF. However, the minute you go to do something with that form outside of your computer, the password goes back on again. The system cannot open password protected documents. So you might think that it's been uploaded, but it actually is password protected and the school can't read it. Make sure you get and reach out to your accountant now before they get too busy and say, hey, listen, I need a copy of a clean copy of my tax return because I need to upload it for a system I'm filling out. For your W-2s, take a screenshot with your phone. As long as it's clear, that's all we need. That's pretty easy to do. So the next C in my is a clear sense about things. When this partnership starts, it's all about, we're looking, anyone that's reviewing files, my company, we look at a lot of applications, and we only know as much about you as you are able to share. So this partnership continues because if you don't tell me that you lost your job, how am I to know this information? If you don't tell me that grandma and grandpa just moved into the house, they're certainly not on last year's tax return. I don't know you have more people in the house. So it's so incredibly important to be clear about what's happening in your financial life. So in order of importance, we're going to just take it down the line. Income is really the most important piece of the puzzle, minus your expenses. Nobody is paying us from their retirement. Nobody is paying us from, their home equity. You're going to pay your tuition from money coming in the house minus the expenses going out of the house. Whatever's left over is your money available to spend on other things, including independent education. So making sure you've got a good sense about the money coming into the house. So when you're answering those questions about income, that's why it's really important if there's been a change of circumstances. Expenses, you have to do that sort of budget piece to say, yep, here are my expenses for, housing, clothing, food, insurance, elder care, daycare, everything that you have for expenses, making sure you've done that exercise so that you can put those good estimates into the application. We then look at assets. We want to know if you've got a primary residence, do you have multiple homes, do you have rental properties, minus what do you have for liabilities? Like many of you, I will have student loan debt until the day I die. And so a lot of us will be paying on student loans. You have no choice about that, unfortunately. You got to make that payment. And we certainly understand that. We are not suggesting that you stop making payments to your student loans, or we're also not suggesting you take out a home equity loan to pay for your kids' education. In fact, it's not even part of the equation that would be something we would suggest you would do. The third important piece we're looking at is family members. Who's in the household? So we have a family of 2, a family of 4, a family of 6, a family of 8. What is your household comprised of? If grandma and grandpa do live in the house, but they're not on your taxes, meaning they're not actual dependents on your taxes, you need to make sure you include them and let us know that you have this elder care piece so that we're aware that these folks are living in the household. So make sure you're listing that out when you fill out the form. If you're just helping grandma and grandpa and they live independently, you want to fill out there's a question, do you have any elder care expenses? And you can explain that. But it's really important for us to know these details, mostly if something's going to change or there is a change of circumstances. We are better prepared if you tell us up front that something has changed than to tell us after we've already done your awarding and then like, hey, just kidding, there's been this major change I forgot to mention. So if there was ever a time to overshare in your life, this is that time. Because again, we're only as good as the data you give us. This is most important for new families. Returning families, we might know you better. And so we already know that, grandma and grandpa dropped the kids off and, we might know more about you. But if there's been a change, we might not realize it. So making sure you're sharing and you're updating your application every year is very important. So again, I mentioned we look at thousands of applications a year, and there are some common mistakes that people make. Hopefully, because now you've attended this webinar, you've got your confidence growing. But there are just some areas I want you to pay more attention to. Really and truly, using that tax return as a guide is going to just make it easier for you to complete the form. So having that in front of you, along with your budget items, is going to be really helpful. If you are remarried, regardless of who is supporting the child in the household, the financial support of the child, we need you to list both of those people on the application. Because of the way that the application works, we're looking at household expenses. So if you're a household of 4 and you put 3 people on the application, it's gonna list it as something's wrong. So make sure you're listing both adults in the household, regardless of who's supporting that child. Your ex-spouse, they will complete their own form, so there's no risk of them seeing your information and you seeing their information. We have parent A and parent B, they apply separately, and if they are both remarried, they're going to both put their spouses on their respective applications. So that'll just save you from the hassle of us reaching back out and asking that question. Go ahead.
There are some questions in the chat, and Radford raised his hand. I don't know if you want to go ahead and continue or if we should address them at the end. Whatever you prefer is okay.
Yeah, no, you know what I meant to say, put your questions in the chat, and what we'll do is once we get to the end, we only have a couple more slides left. Once we get to the end, we're gonna leave at least 10 or 12 minutes for answering questions. And then, we should be able to answer questions. We'll have plenty of time to answer at the end. So put your questions in the chat functionality. We will keep it anonymous, so don't worry about your name being exposed. Nobody else can see your name, so we'll be kept anonymous. So certainly just ask your questions along the way. Make sure you itemize unusual situations. Like I said, if all of a sudden there's some unusual situation, let's say, for example, you're going through a divorce and you have, pretty significant legal fees. That would be an unusual expense. That's sort of not something we expect to continue for the next, 10, well, who knows? But hopefully it only resolves itself in some period of time. But don't tell us that you had a $10,000 unusual expense and no details about it, because we're not going to know what it represents. So leaving those good breadcrumbs for us so that we know what this represents to help us do an assessment or an adjustment to your assessment. Business owners, there's more questions related to businesses because we're looking at things like, did you have depreciation? What you pay in taxes or not is sort of mutually exclusive of what you're taking in for a draw. And so there are more questions for business owners. I often see business owners put their earnings from their business, their profit from business, as W-2 earnings, and then they list it again as a profit from business. So make sure you're paying attention to what number are we asking you to fill in from what form. So take it slowly if you own a business. The last one is really important. What do you think you can afford to pay? If you have done the budget piece, You've done that assessment. You should have a good kind of sense about what you have available to spend. We want you to make an offer that's realistic for you, and it's something that you're going to be able to repeat over the next 4 years. And so often I get families that will like throw out some crazy number, like I can afford to pay, 30 grand. Right, but you make 60. So how is that possible? And there's a fear around, well, if I ask for flexible tuition, if I ask for aid, does that impact my ability to get in for admissions? That is something that people worry about. It is something that is done totally separate. We do not want you to not apply for aid because you think somehow that's going to not get your kid into the school. That is not going to be the reason. They're mission appropriate, they are mission aligned. That process happens completely separate of the financial process. So be honest. What do you truly think you can afford to pay? And after you've done that budget piece, whatever that lands, that lands. Now, don't just put a 0 because you haven't really thought about it. Be realistic. That's an important number for us to look at. If grandma and grandpa are helping, let us know that so we know what is coming from you, what is coming from grandma and grandpa. And for some reason, there are families that they'll put the tuition number in the amount that they can afford to pay, and they sort of flip it around. So pay attention to the question related to affordability. Don't put the full tuition. If you could pay full tuition, you would not be joining this call right now. You would not be filling out these forms. So, and basically, if you do put that in there, we're going to send a message to you and say, did you really mean this or did you mean something else? So pay attention to that question. That's one that people, for some reason, seem to kind of get, have trouble with. Okay. Divorced and separated families. So with divorced families, I already shared, we want you obviously to be applying separately. In 2023, you might have still filed married jointly because, it was a year or so ago. That's okay. You're both going to upload the same tax return essentially, and we will do our parsing out the data. So we will separate you out. We need you to apply separately. Don't try to jam it all onto one application because you're living in separate households. So your expenses are going to be pretty significantly higher because you have double housing, double clothing, double all the things. So if you are divorced, I want you to apply separately. If you are separated, we want you to apply separately because you are living in separate spaces. Even if you're not fully divorced at that point, we still need you to apply separately so that we can make an accommodation for the fact that you do have these additional expenses now that you may have not had previously. And again, if you are remarried, we want you to be listing your new spouse on the application as the other adult in the household. So that's kind of the details with separated, divorced, and or remarried families. What is the expectation around working parents? What if I'm a stay-at-home parent, like by choice? So there are exceptions to this rule, but how flexible tuition works is that the assumption is that, okay, here is the tuition, and we want parents to kind of do what they can do to come up with as much money as they can come up with to cover tuition. That's through their own resources, maybe going to grandma and grandpa if you're fortunate enough to get other people to help support the tuition expense. And then you come to us at the school and say, this is all we can gather, this is what we can do. And the school fills that gap with a flexible tuition grant, right? So the assumption is you're going to do everything you can do to bring in as much money as you're capable of, and by way of working or however you're doing that. So if you are a stay-at-home parent by choice, to be fair and equitable to all parents, we are going to add income to that non-working spouse to be fair and equitable to all the families. You can still certainly be a stay-at-home parent, but we want you to be aware that that's sort of the standard rule. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, and so I want to make sure we're clear about this so that if you fall into one of those exceptions, we want to make sure that we don't add income and that you are a stay-at-home parent because of a unique situation. And the exceptions are this. If you are at home because you're caring for an elderly parent or a disabled child, that is your job, that's what you're doing, that's where you're at, there's no expectation that you would also be working. If you just had a baby and you're staying at home, nowadays, in some cases, it's cheaper to stay home until they're school age, and then you go back into the workforce. At that point, as long as they're under school age, we do not add income for non-working spouses that are stay at home with little ones. If you yourself are disabled and unable to work, that is another example of an exception to the rule. And then the last one would be if you have just lost your job, you are not a stay-at-home parent, you are an unemployed worker. And so we want to make sure we make accommodations for that in a different way. And so letting us know that you lost a job and now you're kind of on the job hunt, there's more information we're going to gather from you because we want to make a good assessment here of where you're at. So the partnership piece of letting us know where you are at around these kind of pieces of the puzzle is going to be really important because there are these sort of assumptions and expectations. So we want to make sure you're letting us know what the scoop is so that we can do our assessment in a way that's appropriate and fair and equitable. You do have to apply each and every year, and that's to make accommodation for changes in circumstances. Someone loses a job, someone gains a job, things change. Maybe you have another child in independent school now, maybe you have 2 kids now. So as things change, things change. And in this crazy world that we live in, it's happened more frequently than in years past that people have gotten jobs or lost jobs. And so in order for us to meet you where you're at, we do need you to apply each and every year. So I'm gonna log into the system live for you all, so that you can kind of see it live. But I wanted to show you a couple of key components of the system. It's an online application. You're probably very familiar completing an online form. Lots of you have done it before. But when you log into the fax system, it's going to say to you, okay, are you ready to complete your 25-26 application? And you'll click on this to continue to the application. I'm going to take you in live so you'll see it. But the places I wanted to talk about, you'll be able to search for the school you could simply just put in San Francisco and it's going to list all the schools in San Francisco and you'll be able to find the school. You could actually just put in the base school and it'll pop right up. But find the school. So you search for the school, you find the school, you click the box, and you add that school to your school. You add that school to your child. So I'm going to take you in live because I've already gone in and added the base school so you can see what that looks like in the live section, but it's very easy to add the kids and add the school. Here is something that always kind of trips people up. And I did this the first time I filled out this form because I didn't pay attention to the fact that step number 3 was my students. And in my mind, the applicant is the kid, not the parent. However, in this form, the parent/guardians of the students are the applicants. And then it's going to ask you about the kiddos because I got halfway through the applicant thing and then I realized, wait, you're looking for my information, not my kids. So learn from my mistakes. And then the third section is going to be about the kids, but just knowing that the applicants are actually the parents. Then we get to the kids section. So here's where you're going to list your kiddos and whatever school that they're applying to. So here's the base school, what grade are they applying for? And then there's a handful of other questions, where do they go where are they going currently? Are they, how much did you pay or how much of this child's tuition can you pay? That's that question. How much do you think you can afford to pay, right? That's that sort of critical question. If you are divorced and separated, there's going to be a question about, do you share responsibility for the student with an individual not included on the application? So that's how we link these files together so that we know that there is another parent that should be part of this house, that's part of this child's parent. So you'll be able to click yes, and then it'll give the details for you. The other critical important information, this is why you want to have your taxes in front of you. I don't know anyone that knows their adjusted gross income off the top of your head. So it's going to ask you questions that you're going to want to have in front of you that will make this application a lot easier. If you own a business or businesses and how they're configured, if you are a business owner, you would go to, excuse me, what's called your Schedule E to find out if you have a partnership or an S Corp. If you are just sort of a sole proprietor, you will have what's called a Schedule C. So if you have whatever type of business you own or multiple of these, you could have all of these different types of businesses. Just select the ones that apply to you, and then it's going to make requirements for tax docs related to that. So just make sure you pay attention to this question here if you are a business owner. Non-taxable items. So some of these might apply to you, some of them might not. So just take your time, read through them, and see if and check any of the ones that apply to you. If you are a parent that receives death benefits or Social Security benefits, you might have that going on, or you're on Social Security, it's going to ask you information about benefits there. So if you don't have any non-taxable items and income, that's fine. Not everybody does. Just look at your tax return. It's going to show you kind of those taxable items, but these other ones would be non-taxable items to pay attention to. This is going to be the question related to whether or not there's going to be a change of circumstances coming up next year, meaning in 2025. So if you are anticipating a drop in earnings in the next year, important to let the school know, because essentially we're looking at all the information now, but you're not really going to start paying until, the spring. Giving a heads up to the school, they might reach out and say, okay, tell me more. What's going on? Are you losing your job? Have you just lost your job? What's going on here? So letting them know if there's going to be a change or a decrease in your earnings in the next year, and sort of what are the kind of the main reasons as to why. Doing that budget, super helpful, right? Because now we're going to start asking you questions that are about monthly expenses, housing, vehicles, credit cards, educational loan, monthly student loan debt. If you get any, these are your expense pieces. Now, in the fax application, we ask you about monthly expenses, and then we ask you about annual expenses. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to what's being asked of you. Are we asking it a monthly question, or are we asking an annual question? That obviously can make a difference. Annual expenses come after the monthly expenses. And so this is where you're going to talk about that elder care piece that I was mentioning. Who do you care? Do you have elderly parents that you're caring for, and what are the expenses related to that? So there is really good value in doing that sort of budget exercise, because a lot of these questions are going to be asked of you that you might not kind of have a quick knowledge of what's your annual expenses for these things. In the assets and debt side, this is, again, I would just take the time and go to your websites for your checking and savings and any sort of investment accounts. If you have any 529 plans, what was the last statement that you got? What was the value of it? Do you have any what is the value of your retirement plans? So doing that exercise with the budget, and then going to the websites of the companies that you utilize for your retirement plans, for whatever, estimating the value of your home. I wouldn't even recommend you get any more complicated than going to your tax assessor's office. And then you can just, thank you, California. I just got my tax assessed bill. So, it tells you the value of my property. Zillow is hit or miss. And again, we're not actually doing there's no calculation happening on equity in the fax application. It's just getting a sense of where you're at and what is your debt load that you're dealing with. So do it just as best you can estimate of the value, and then going to your mortgage statement, what do you owe on the home of the value, what's the amount that you owe on your mortgage? I'm going to hop in so I can show you quickly live with the application, but I wanted to give you all the phone number. And then also, as you're completing the form, if you have a question that you don't understand, if you click on the little blue think bubble, the little question mark, it's going to give you help information to say, hey, what we're really asking about here is X, Y, and Z. If between the frequently asked questions and this help text, you're not getting the answer you need about the question, call the customer service at fax. They're wonderful. Do not call Amy. Do not call the admissions folks. They can't reset your password. They can't change your password. They can't answer all the questions on the application, because that's what fax is for. Why you would reach out to the school would be, and a good example would be, I am a divorced parent and I've completed my form and my ex is not willing to complete the form. And we know that you need both the parents, and now you're in a bit of a panic. Reach out to the school. There are circumstances where we can waive the requirement for a parent B. There are other things we can do to get around it. Maybe someone from the school can reach out to the other parent on your behalf. So don't wait till the last minute on those kind of school-specific things. Take your time on it, but the school is not really there to help you complete the form per se, because they're going to be very busy in that time frame. they're there for those kind of school-specific questions that you might have. All right, so let me just pop out of this real quick. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute and then share again. And then we're gonna end show, and then we'll hop into. So this is the application kind of in real time and live. Everything here is very much like drag and drop downs. If you say yes, it's going to ask you like something else. And as you go, you can save and continue, or you can save and exit. If you have, it just kind of, you just have a little checkbox. So you just kind of go down the line and kind of work your way through the application. If it says yes somewhere, what scholarships have you applied for? These are all text boxes, so you can do all, kind of leaving those good breadcrumbs around questions is really important here. So this is kind of, if you want to go backwards, save and continue, save and exit. You will know you're done when you get through. All of these little things will turn green, and then you can hit the submit button. And then once you hit the submit button, it's going to take you to the area where you can upload the tax documents. So you'll upload them as a PDF. And your W-2s, you can upload those as JPEGs, which is a screenshot for your phone, or as PDFs, whatever you've got, that they'll both work. And then you'll know that your process is completed. And then if the school reaches out with questions, there's a notifications tab, and you'll get notifications that there's something we need from you, and they'll send emails as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then we're going to take questions. So let me go to the chat feature. Now, before we even get into the questions, I said in the beginning, I want you to walk away with a sense of calmness, a sense of clearness, and a sense of confidence. Now, I also said that I all have 2 kids that have been going to school since 18 months. They do not say thank you yet. So on behalf of your children, because someday they will thank you. It's not going to be today, it's not going to be tomorrow, and they won't even realize that the sacrifice that you've made to make this a possibility really anytime soon, until they're paying for their kids to go to private school. So on behalf of your children, thank you so much. If you have to scoot and hop off, feel free to do so, and I wish you the best of luck. Those of you that are hanging on, we're here to answer a bunch of questions, but feel free to bounce off if you feel like you've gotten the answers that you need. So anything else, Amy, before I just kind of dive into some of these questions?
No, just thank you to everyone who's made the time to spend with us this evening. Alyssa, as always, thank you for that great information and the way you delivered it to all of us. I once again learned quite a bit, and I'm ready to go on to the Q&A because they've got really good questions tonight, Alyssa.
Yeah, and we also want to say thank you to Dr. Leslie. Is Dr. Leslie? Because I don't know how I'm from Boston, if that becomes painfully obvious when I start going. I know I talk very fast, and I'm so appreciate you like keeping up. I am very impressed, and I apologize for my speed. Okay, so the first question is, do you know if we use the same login if we had a fax account for a different child several years ago? That's actually a great question. So if you use the fax application for a lower school application, maybe a year or 2 ago, I don't know how many years back it goes. If it was more than, I would say, a year ago, maybe not, but just try it, because the advantage is that it does move all of your demographic data over. And so try it out and see if it works. I know absolutely if you completed this form last year, even for a different school, log in if you already have an account with fax. And then you just can add the base school and put it on for the kids. So absolutely, give it a try. I don't know how many years back it lets you keep that same login, but that would be great if you can just kind of log back in. So yes, if you've already completed the fax form previously in the last year or so, absolutely log in with the same account, and then you just add the base school as the new application year. Can we use a current fax account when we use to pay our elementary school tuition? Like I said, try it out, see if you can log in. It depending on the system. Again, I don't work for fax, so I'm not a total fax guru. We use them for the financial aid kind of platform, but I know they have a billing and tuition solution as well. If you give it a try, see if you're able to complete the application. I'm pretty sure you can because they are usually connected, but give it a try. If you already have a fax account, just give it a try. Okay. Next question is, for someone who just moved to the United States from abroad, what kind of documentation is needed regarding taxes? Okay, great question. So if you filed foreign taxes previously, then you will upload last year's foreign tax return. And what is going to happen pretty immediately is our team or the team from a school is going to reach out and say, can you get your current paycheck stub? Because now you're going to be domestic, you're working domestically in the United States, and maybe it's different than where you were previously. We will likely request a current paycheck stub and then do kind of analysis of last year compared to this year. So absolutely, you can upload foreign tax returns. That's perfectly fine. So that's a great question for those that are coming in from abroad. We have a lot of consulate people in San Francisco that come from France and all over, so that's pretty common. Should we estimate 2024 income and any dividends for the initial submission? Yes, that's going to be asked of you. It's actually asking you everything about what happened in 2024. You're essentially using your 2023 taxes as the kind of the guide, but really we are looking for your best estimate for what's happening right now kind of in 2024. If we don't have W-2s or 1099s, what's the best way to do this estimating, especially if the numbers have changed dramatically since 2023? So if for me, depending on how it sounds like you own a business. If you own it, because if you're not getting W-2s, you're getting 1099s. So there's a couple of ways. One, if you own a business, your current profit and loss statement, that would be your estimated net income. That would be what you would use. If you are a family that is, depending on how you're being paid, you can look at a bank statement and what are you bringing in monthly, and then put that, times that for the year, and that's going to be your estimate for the year if you've been working for the calendar year. Again, these are all estimates. The minute that you tell on your application that something has dramatically changed from last year to this year, we're going to start looking for documentation based on how you tell us your job is configured. Are you a business owner, or are you a W-2 employee, or are you a 1099, or whatever, how you're configured? So that's a good question. So doing your best estimates for 2024 is what we're looking for. Yep, you can. Another question is, can I start filling out and then pause and save, or does it all have to be done in one session? No, absolutely. You can go in, complete a section, save and exit. So you can come out of it and then go back into it. Even if you've already submitted it and you realize that you made a mistake because you came to this session, you're like, oh, I forgot something, I need to go do something. You can still log back in, make a change to what you need to change, and hit save and exit again. So you can edit your application even after you've submitted it. So you've got lots of flexibility there. How do you make assessments of families who make a lot of money and spend a lot of money on expenses versus those who make less and save a lot of money, thus may have more on hand to pay tuition? That's a great question. Actually, it's done a little bit differently. So just because you spend all your money every month doesn't make you more needy. You just make different choices, right? So the way we do the protections for expenses is we have a cap maximum expense protection. For example, for groceries, say example, we use a local cost of living adjustment for San Francisco area. And we know that it costs, like maybe it's $1,600 a month, whatever it might be. We're going to protect up to that amount per month. If you tell us you're spending $5,000 a month on groceries, we're like, great, good for you. But we're only going to protect up to a maximum that's fair and equitable for everybody and reasonable. So it's not really about, like, if I tell you I spend all this money, then we're going to give you that same protection. We're protecting fair and reasonable expenses for everybody so that it's fair and equitable. And to mention a little bit about savings, we absolutely assume and we expect that people will do savings. Nobody is suggesting you shouldn't be saving. And to be honest with you, the kids aren't going to pay you back. So be very, be careful about that. So we truly do expect you to do your savings, do your do your 401k, do all of those things that are reasonable. Nobody is suggesting you shouldn't do that. So yes, we do make sure we're fair and equitable about protections for expenses, but not giving people some obscene amount of protection for expenses. Okay. How do we account for anticipated future expenses next year? Our older daughter will be going to college, but we don't know where yet. Just do a rough estimate. Just, if the tuition at the school that you're considering is $50,000, you can put that in there. We pretty much do a protection for kids in college that's capped at a dollar amount anyway, so we're only going to be able to do so much protection there anyway. So do your best estimates for if you've got an upcoming freshman going to college, and you're definitely not going to know, and God knows when you'll know with the FAFSA this year. Last year was a very long time. You will likely not know what you're going to be paying for the kid that's heading off to college, but we do make accommodations for expenses for the kids in college as well. But there is a cap there too. So just give us your best estimate for the kids heading off to college. How do we treat 529 plans? We treat that as just part of your assets. There are actual tax implications for 529 plans in California. So when everybody says, "Oh, it's like you're not tax free," like no, wait. California, there are some tax implications for using 529. So just talk to your tax person. We see what you have for 529 plans, but initially those were built to be college savings plans. You can use up to $10,000 for K-12 education, but nobody is suggesting that we don't automatically take 10,000 of your 529 and make it available for tuition at our school, at the school level. You can do that if you choose to, but it's just we're looking at what you have for overall assets, and that's just one of the pieces of the puzzle. But it is not, there is no assumption that you would use $10,000 per child. That's a good question. I know there's a lot of concern around that. And really at this point, you've got college literally right around the corner. So we know you're trying to kind of build those up for college. We get that. Okay, let me see if I got a couple of other good questions. How much income do you add for the stay-at-home parent? It's actually variable depending on the school that in the Bay Area, we typically, actually most of California, and I work with schools all over the country, but the best practices by the National Association is to put minimum wage is the standard. So if in California, I think we're at 15 or 16 an hour. So we basically make the assumption, could you go work at Starbucks and earn a minimum wage? We don't know what you do for a living. We're not going to say, oh, well, because you have a master's degree, you should be able to earn $90,000. No, it's a very low cap, very low impact thing that we add for stay-at-home parents that don't qualify to kind of be an exemption. And it is past 7, so I want folks to know you can certainly jump off. I'll stay on till about 10 past, and then of course, then I need to feed children that will be banging down my door soon. So let me see if there's any more critical questions here. Okay. I'm just trying to find ones that are more universal and not unique to one person. Okay. Okay, a couple of, there's actually quite a few about it's interesting the sense about what if I'm a saver and not a spender? Am I going to be kind of negatively impacted from the other people that are spenders, not savers? And like I said, we know you are humans, not just a mathematical equation, but we do put guide rails in for a reason. Flexible tuition is about fairness and equity across a wide swath of families that have different priorities, right? Some people prioritize, grandparents above other things, so priorities are very different. Since we can't make you have different priorities, we have to make sure we're doing something fair and equitably. So don't be worried that because you're more of a saver than a spender, that somehow you're going to be negatively impacted. Again, it's very, very similar protections across the board. And in fact, very little of anybody's asset pieces are kind of as part of the calculation. Like I said, we're mostly looking at income coming into the house as what you're going to be paying for, because we want it to be actionable and something that you can repeat every single year. If we tell you to use all of your savings to pay for this year's education, well, then what do we do next year? And most people, the money in their checking account, where did that originate from? The money that came from their check I don't know a ton of people that have so much money floating around that it's all extra money hanging out in their checking account. Um, okay. What if the father of my child lives with us, but we file separately? Yeah, no, that's actually one of the questions. Are you married filing jointly? Are you separately or single? However your taxes are configured, that's a pretty strict, absolutely you can just tell us. So you could have people that one files head of household if you've never been married. There's a lot of partnerships and different configurations. Everybody does something different. So you just let us know for applicant and co-applicant how you file your taxes. You might say I'm head of household, and then this person might say I file single. So just however you file your taxes, it'll be listed on your tax return how you file for that year. Okay. Um,
Melissa, I want to be very respectful of your time. I think we probably
yeah,
have the opportunity for one last question.
maybe one more. Yes. I'm trying to find one that I typically see. Um, Yeah, some of these are more like, so if you have multiple children that are applying for independent school, it is going to ask you to kind of itemize those kiddos out. And so if you've got, so a couple of these questions were related to if I'm filling out facts for a lower school kid and then we have the kid applying to Bay, it's all in the same application. And so the personal statement at the end of the application where you can like add, other things to consider for the school. It is not, it would be this, it's going to be the same application. So if you have two kids and they're applying for two different school, one for lower school and one for Bay, in your personal statement, assuming you had to give more, I mean, that section at the end is not really about a personal statement. It's more about what's your financial situation. But if you feel like you want to write something specifically to the lower school and something about one child, and then specifically to Bay about the upper school child, it is one thing. So, and it's going to both the schools. So, the lower school is going to ignore what you're saying about the upper school, and we're going to ignore what you're saying about the lower school. So just itemize it out and say, for my child attending, X school, I wanted to let you know whatever it is you feel like you need to share. And then for my child attending the Bay school, I want to let you know X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the application where it says, is there anything more you need to share? This isn't really an admissions question. It's not about like all of your children are wonderful, beautiful, and magical, and they get great grades. And we know that. That's not going to affect how we change or adjust the calculation. That's an admissions thing. You put all of that jazz into the admissions application. On the finance application, it's really, is there something in the 20 some odd questions we asked you short of your DNA that hasn't been answered that you feel is relevant? Because if it's relevant for your older kid, it's going to mostly be relevant for the younger kid. The only exception to that might be, and again, you can even list that as the example I have. My daughter has dyslexia, so we have significantly more out-of-pocket medical expenses for her tutoring and all that kind of stuff. But there is a place in the application for out-of-pocket medical, and I just usually put my daughter's information. I'll say, oh, my daughter has dyslexia, and we spend, X amount a month. But if you feel like there's something relevant to each of your children that you think you need to put down below, you want to make sure you do put it by child, because that application it's a single app and it's a collaborative app. So every school is going to get the same information. So it's not going to be like customized that much different. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope I've answered a lot of your questions. A lot of your technical questions that would be very much about the app. Like I saw a couple of technical questions. Reach out to Facts. Their staff is wonderful. They're there. They're patient. They're going to answer the questions. Your questions are questions they've heard 10 million times before, and they'll be able to walk you through and help you get through this process. Absolutely. So do reach out to them. That they're a good resource for you.
Thank you. I cannot echo that enough. The folks at Fax will be more than happy to help you as you navigate through this application. Alyssa, again, thank you so much for all of this wisdom. That's really what it was. It was wisdom that you shared with all of us tonight. Thank you. And Dr. Leslie, again, thank you for your speed and accuracy. Alyssa does speak quickly, doesn't she?
I know, I'm so sorry. I
So
try to
much
do that.
information was shared. It was great. No, thank you so much. So to everyone else out there, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. We do hope that this information was helpful. If you have any questions at all, again, please feel free to reach out to FACS or reach out to the admissions office, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. Please also remember that we are on the FACS application for flexible tuition. And your applications for FACS and for admissions is due on January the 9th. All right, everyone. Thank you so much and good night. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Good luck.
Bye-bye.